Chicago, Greater Chicago.
Yeah.
And so this whole church growth plague is based on this idea of all of these tools and principles to grow your church. And of course, you don't want to get in the way, Susan, unless you've seen there's pavement rollers that put pavement down there like several feet wide, and it's a roller that weighs a ton, I think. Yeah. And you can say all you want about them, but if you get in their path, you will join the pavement.
Yes. Yes.
Or if you prefer, become a penny on one of those railroad ties for the next freight train that comes by.
I know what you're saying. I know.
Now, in all this excitement of this exchange, now I forgot that our track. Was the church growth another fatally flawed principle, and that is that God has raised us up with method and technology and principles by which we can grow the church. But the fact is that there is no biblical mandate whatsoever to grow the church. The Lord increases as he would increase, or he'll decrease as he would decrease. That's his job. So we've usurped the role of the Lord himself by suggesting that it is our job to grow the church.
Yeah.
So the principle is wrong, and it's at its foundation. Now you mix that with a host of false teachers, and now all the Roman Catholic mystics that have been imported.
Yeah.
Sad to say, the denomination that I most played in, and I believe you came from.
The Catholic.
Where or Assembly of God you came out of?
I came out of, actually, I was raised Catholic.
You were raised Catholic, so...
Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I went to a Catholic school for till grade 8, and but I got out of Catholicism early because I realized even at a young age I had to get out of it. But
so you actually fled to principalities.
Yeah, I did.
You
get me out of here.
Richard Bennett, my friend who I did that.
Yeah, I emailed him because I said, wow, I'd love to interview him, too.
I'm sure you could. Just do it on your own, or you can mention me if you want. But one of the biggest shocks in his life was after he finally got set free from the bondage of Roman Catholicism.
He was a priest.
Yes, for 22 years. And he knew all about all of the mysticism that was taught in the seminary and
he knew it
out the world. So the horror of all horrors is thinking he's totally set free in the evangelical church, only to discover that the evangelical church is now dusted off all of these Roman Catholic mystics and desert fathers with all of their baggage of false teaching, and imported them into the church, not just mainline churches, they're there also, but evangelical, supposedly conservative doctrine churches, of all things, in great part, thanks to Richard Foster, who was not even a Catholic himself, but a Quaker. And so he single-handedly, he's probably, at least in the early days, the most responsible for bringing mysticism through the back door into the conservative church. And then Rick Warren jumped on the bandwagon in promoting both Richard Foster, but a host of his own Roman Catholic mystics in his Purpose-Driven Life book. And so a lot of people said, well, you expose Purpose-Driven Life book in your book, Who's Driving the Purpose-Driven Church, which, by the way, is you can go read about it on, and my second book on Rick Warren's Global Peace Plan versus Scripture, which is on our new website that just launched in the summer, is called perfectpeaceplan.com.
Okay, perfectpeaceplan.com. Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting for the end times, this whole global peace plan he has. very
interesting. I get, when it happens to a church, it often happens very slowly, like the frog in the water. If it was hot, they jump out right away. But when it happens slowly, they don't know what hit them until they're cooked to death.
Why do you think that Rick Warren became so famous? Seems like overnight. And how did he became very wealthy? He sold how many books? 30 million. How does one do that when no one even knew who Rick Warren was? Basically, just came out of nowhere.
Well, he did. You could ask the same question about how did Barack Obama become president.
Yeah.
He ran a great campaign. He'd send out free books to pastors around the country. He did like what Willow Creek did, and they have these surveys, and Robert Schuller and things where they interview, they audition the world to find out what they'd like to hear. And then they design the church format, and like a McDonald's franchise, what are the things that will make this
So that's how they got started, was they sent out these books and surveys?
Well, it was surveys, but also sending out, originally Rick Warren's first book was called The Purpose-Driven Church, which was not a huge seller, but I think it sold several 100,000 or something like that. And so he built his network, believe it or not with individuals, but with other pastors initially.
Yeah.
And now he's got, writes all these sermons for the pastors that go out all over the world, and these people pay money in order to have these sermons. But the most frightening thing to me, Susan, is if you had a book that you wanted to have your Sunday school class study and read, even a book that you knew was false teaching, but you wanted to study it for the sake of being on top of what's going on. Say the DaVinci Code, for example. You could go through it, and you'd have some heated debate in the Sunday school class, and it was a #1 seller, sold millions. But basically, the book comes and goes, and you had the heated exchange, and then it runs its course, and it never really took over the Sunday school class or the local church or the church, the whole denomination. That's not true of Rick Warren's #1 bestseller. His blueprints are to have the church transformed. We talked about that earlier in the radio interview. Is to go in and not just have the book available and let's do this in our Sunday school class and the book will come and go. Although they do have their 40 days of purpose, and they'll do these 40-day campaigns where they want the whole church to do the whole church to do it, not just the Sunday school. So why I have another interview that I call Rick Warren the most dangerous pastor in the world is that no other authors, for that matter, even Barack Obama, does not take over your church or your local or denomination. Sometimes we might feel like that because of some of his philosophy and his promotion of abortion, etc. But fundamentally, they don't have that kind of power, or are they given it? But local churches, if they can get a hold of enough of the people within that congregation to go along with, first of all, to do the 40 days of purpose, but later on to do the to do the book and the transformation of the church. So that, because they don't want to just have a campaign that goes 40 days, they ultimately want to take over the whole thinking of your church, and ultimately they succeeded, and that's another.
Oh yes, it's been very effective.
And then they got a number of local churches taken over, and whether it's Assemblies of God, their version of it is called We Build People. But Southern Baptist, eventually the whole denomination is hijacked. The Assemblies of God's been taken over.
Yes.
A Christian Missionary Alliance, Southern Baptist, and there's virtually very few that have not been changed, if not by his direct blueprint, Susan, by the mentality. Because I could list you 10 churches that have been hijacked and seized that Rick Warren never heard of, but these people believed in his philosophy and implemented the philosophy. And then the next thing, the church, people wondered what hit them, what happened to their church. And believe me, I know. I get the emails and calls from all over the world, and the United States and Canada is the biggest quantity of these churches that have been dismembered, and there's nobody left to pick up the pieces of these bloodied saints that have been dismembered by Rick Warren's blueprints. And so, can you see why I am concerned about Rick Warren?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.